Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast today from Newburyport, Massachusetts, in the USA, Jillfrances Gray, who's the founder and creative director of JFG Visual Communications. Jillfrances is a visual storyteller, a creative problem solver, and a passionate advocate for helping startups and entrepreneurs transform their ideas into impactful brands. Welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast, Jillfrances. It's a real privilege to have you here as my guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be having our conversation.
Yeah, me too. Now, I know you've had a fascinating journey from aspiring opera singer, and it'd be interesting
Right.
to hear you perform on the show. But now, of course, your focus is as creative director of a visual communications company, and I'm really looking forward to chatting to you about visual communications and branding today. Now, before we get into that deeply, what impact do you aim to make in the world with your work, Jill?
I really love helping people. And I know everybody says that, but it's it's true. I really find that being able to look creatively and finding solutions to challenges, mostly for startups, and really fascinating because it's never though there's never one answer. There could be many answers into something, and trying to figure that out or to look at something and look at the different angles in which you can find a solution for that is fascinating. I mean, I find it very enjoyable. I it's the best part of what I do. Plus, because of being creative, I get to also create artwork and create stories and create videos and everything like that to then reinforce what the solution might be. So there's always an opportunity to kind of look at things and figure out different ways to tell that story and message. And I'm just very grateful that I've got to be able to do this as my livelihood. And so, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating. As you were talking there, Jill Francis, couldn't help thinking that it must be a lot of fun if you get pleasure from writing stories or creating stories and creating images and videos and so on to then find ways to apply that in a way where it really transforms a business and transforms a brand. So how did you discover that this was the best way to use your creative outlets?
So as you mentioned, like I went to college originally to study opera. During when I was growing up, I was always told that I had a nice voice and I could sing and I got parts in plays and everything. And then when it came time to go to college, I just went because everybody said, "Oh, you should do this," right? And so then when I got to college, I mean, I like singing, but like when you look down at becoming a professional opera singer, it's really hard and it's a lot of work. And then I'm like, "Do you really like classical music?" I'm not sure. So then, I went to Berkeley and I studied jazz. And again, it was like, it's really hard. And I kind of figured like I would never probably make it as a professional musician. I'd always have to have another job, whether it be a waitress or a secretary or some kind of other job. And it made me start thinking about, well, if what is that other job that I'd want to do? Um, so I had remembered there was somebody again in high school that was did graphic design. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try that. And so I ended up applying to art school and I got a scholarship and it kind of just went from there. So I think it's just part of I guess I have a creative spirit. And so just being able to translate into creativity in that way. So being able to um look at things like that, or look at things in a creative facet, led me to doing what I do now.
Mm, So you made
Yeah.
the switch from the audio audio creativity, if you like, although I guess there's a big visual element to performing on stage, but made the
Yeah.
switch completely to visual.
Yeah, yeah. That's actually very true. Yeah, I really just there's I mean, again, you're still putting yourself into whatever you're producing, whether that be singing or creating a piece of artwork or creating an infographic or, or a video, you're still putting yourself into something. Um and it's just a different medium in which to express yourself. And with especially with design or the way that I run my business is just like the ability to help other people goes back to um that because you're giving in a different way, and it's a different type of outlet.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. The the idea of kind of visual communication always fascinated me as someone that is probably not visual as my preferred communication style, but understands the importance of it. I always
Mhm.
struggled with when I was building websites for people because I was coming from a strategic point of view and coming from the point of view of this is a business tool and we need to get it live as soon as possible so that it can start generating business for you and do whatever the strategy was for it. And I always
Right.
found myself getting frustrated when people would say, "Oh, I'm not quite sure I like that color," or "Can you move that 3 pixels to the left or 3 pixels to the right?" And I'd be like tearing my hair out and
Right.
say, "Let's make this thing live and worry about all that stuff later." So, so can you talk to us a little bit, Jill Francis, about finding that balance between the visual communication part and the design part and the strategy part of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess, strategy, absolutely, you have to have it in order to have a successful project, because you have to have your foundation of why you're doing something, and like who you want to talk to, what you want to say to them, what you're saying to them is going to be appropriate, what is going to actually attract them and have them remember you, and so all those foundational keys are essential when it comes to visual communications and design. That is a way to reach that um, emotional aspect to what people are going to resonate with, and what they're going to be attracted to, and what they're going to want to learn more about or have in their life, or see themselves doing or being a part of. So that part of the challenge is so important. So that's why I think visual communications and strategy work really well together. But bringing up the point about when businesses want to move really fast and they want to just get something up. Um, I do understand that, especially since I do work with startups the majority of the time. Being able to understand and being very flexible and agile with how things move and the speed in which they move. But the one thing that I pride myself on is just being really focusing on the details. Like, you can do a design, but if you're not looking at the details and the nuances of what makes that design more eye catching or more emotionally grabbing or anything like that, it is those little tiny details,
Mm,
and that um, you just have to really pay attention to, and you have to put time and thought and think about it, because at the end of the day, you do something fast and it's very generic, and it's it's not resonating, you're not going to get those customers or clients that you're looking for. So even though, yes, there's a rapid speed of wanting to have this done, there's also the fact that if it's done right and it's done correctly, you're going to have a larger impact. Um, so you kind of have to balance it out. Um, Part of working with startups and having the fact that things do go rather quickly is that there's always iteration, there's always prototyping, there's always trying and losing and changing, and just being adaptable to that type of practice. It just it's just what the industry, or at least what I kind of do with in my own business model. So I'm used to it. Um, but I also push for the details and the nuances and
mm,
to make it better and to be really aware um of the little details. So
mm. Yeah, it's
yeah.
fascinating. One of the things I find, and maybe this is again me not
Yeah.
having visual communication as my primary style, but I
Mhm.
I look at, like, my own website, for example. I I don't see details on that anymore because I look at it and I know what I wanna do with it, and I see it so often that it's kind of almost burnt in my brain that somebody could come in there and make a slight change to it, and I probably
Mhm.
wouldn't even notice it because I'd see what's burned in my brain rather than what's actually there.
Right.
Do you have that experience, or if you do, how do you combat that in terms of
Huh.
looking at those details and making improvements when you decide, I'm not sure this is working as well as we intended?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some cases, you have to think of like the people that you're working with, and I hope this doesn't come across as a negative, but sometimes there's people visually don't see the same thing.
Mm.
They're not going to notice the details of, that's why it's hard to compare one designer next to the other because it might be the stylistic or it might be um the color combinations are more appealing to one person than the other, or so sometimes those details are not necessarily going to resonate in the same way. um so it is very difficult sometimes when you're working with a client that really can't see the details or can't see the nuances and just want to get it up, or um but still at the end of the day, I take pride in the work that I do, so I usually can get what I want out of it, to be still proud of it and still be effective and things like that. Um, but again, you can't really tell because again, there's going to be people who care and there's going to be people that don't care, and there's going to be people who can see it and there's people who's not going to be able to see it. And it's, there's no like secret fortune to get to have it.
Yeah.
Everybody likes the same thing. So
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a really important point you make there is about, or maybe you made it earlier about the audience you're speaking to and really knowing that audience and what's going to emotionally connect with them. So,
yeah.
um, video is something that you mentioned earlier that you also
Mhm.
produce videos, and I guess there's a lot more scope for being creative in videos. Talk to us a little bit about the
Mhm.
power of video and some examples of
Yeah.
how you approach that.
Well, the great thing about video is, well, it's instantaneous in the sense that you can you're watching something and it's moving and it's talking to you, and it's something that is making the senses aware in a different way. So it's not like you're reading through something or you're looking at a diagram trying to figure out what it's saying. You're essentially seeing this moving thing that whether it has music or it has words or has a scene playing out in front of you. It's something that your eye's going to grasp on right away. Um, and the cool thing about like doing video is that like you have the opportunity to really think about the music that goes along with whatever clips you're using. You have the opportunity to um, think about the words that somebody is reading. You have the opportunity to like work with a voice, talent who has a really engaging voice and nice timbre, and that really can act out the words that you're trying to say. And you have the opportunity to work with great photographers and videographers who can get great lighting and show movement or show happiness or show emotion in a different way. When you put those all together, it has such great impact. I mean, that's why like when we look at movies or we look at that type of thing, like it's a lot that goes into it. And so as far as with businesses and such, being able to do a really effective video, um, it gets your message across in a faster period of time. It gets your eyes to look at it and understand it a lot clearer. Um, it holds people's attention a little bit more, especially if it's done really well, especially with really good music or a really good voice, like a speaker. Um, it it can say a lot in a little period of time so that your message can be done, clearer, better. Not to say that commercials aren't annoying, but that is why they have 30-minute, 30-second commercials.
Mm.
It's that opportunity to um, grab those that are going to resonate with, you know, you're gonna look at things that resonate more with you. If they're saying the message that you're looking for at that particular time, it's gonna have an impact on you. So there's a lot of opportunity. Plus, if you think about SEO and where the internet's going right now, video is the way that you want to grab people's attention because everybody's so busy and they're constantly like moving and they don't really have time to read or they don't have time to like glance at things. A video message is going to have more impact to be able to, grab that person's attention for the 30 seconds that you might have them.
Mm.
So, or,
Yeah.
it's an opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the idea of the short video, 'cause I think
Yeah.
you're right, that does grab people's attention, and um, I still see a lot of these, what would you call them, 1990s video sales letters where
Okay.
somebody rambles on for
Oh,
over an
yeah.
hour or so, and all I wanna know is what's the bottom line? What's your message? What are you selling? And they ramble on for ages without getting to the point, and worse than that, the videos are constructed so that all my technology that I use, where I can run a video at 2 or 3 or 4 times speed, or, the little slider where you can say, "Okay, I'm just gonna skip forward to," or "I'm gonna
Yeah.
skip to the end to see what the bottom line is."
Yeah.
All of that's been disabled. They have this technology. So they're trying
Yeah.
to force you through this hugely
Right.
long video sales letter, and usually I when I realize that's what it is, I just exit and go. So um, I'm
Yeah.
not even interested. Mm,
No, yeah. I mean, that's similar to like really long sales pages, like sometimes landing pages that will, go on and on and on. And there's a formula for building those. Like you specifically want the problem, you want the solution, you want the
mm,
testimonials, you want the benefits, you want the, if it's, like all that stuff. Put the price way down at the bottom. And so they figure if you get to the bottom, you're really interested.
mm,
And that's not really necessarily true, but I think those are more like a tactic versus trying to get somebody to emotionally invest. I'm thinking of more of even if the short form videos that sometimes are on LinkedIn, just being, somebody who does like a 30, 60 minute just saying hello.
mm.
That's a post. You get a sense of that person a lot faster. I don't think anybody really needs to sit through a 30-minute video to get a sense of who a person is.
And
I think it's more effective on like the shorter thing. But
mm. And I think
um,
for small business, I don't know how you see this, but for small business, um, it would make a lot more sense at that point if there's that emotional connection from that short video that's um, really speaking to somebody, and there is that emotional connection. Then the next step really is actually a live conversation.
yeah, yeah. Ultimately, you want to be able to resonate with the people you want to talk to and work with,
Mm,
um, and that's the ultimate goal.
yeah.
And so it's just finding out the best way to communicate that and to really resonate. Um, that's the simple part that I see. It's just sometimes it's manipulative and forsaken advertising where they overdo, trying to get to the emotional part where there's the story that it's just so unrealistic, but everybody wants that.
Mm,
They want that life, but do they actually get it? Who knows? But,
mm,
they want, because it's the holiday season, they want their house to look like that and they want, so yeah.
mm. Well, let's talk a little bit about storytelling, Jill Francis. So, I mean, obviously, you've talked about the visual aspects of a good video or a good website, but it's got to tell a story, right? So, how do you get to the essence of that story, and particularly for a video where, let's say, you've got 30 seconds to deliver that message and the essence of that story of that
Yeah.
brand, that then brings that connection. How do you get to that?
I mean, I think it goes back to strategy. It's going back to like really knowing your why of why you do the company, like whatever the company does, of like why they do it. The who, like who they want to talk to. Clarity, finding about who that person is and what is going to resonate with them. And then clearly knowing like what benefits you're bringing to them and how you can make their life easier. And so then when you have those foundational elements, you kind of, and, toss in your values and your, what you really stand for, and then look at how that's going to really resonate with your audience. And then you start the story from there, because again, it can't be all about me if I want to help you. It has to be all about you and what's what you're really looking for. Like, what is the thing that you're looking to fix or to enjoy or into um taste, or like what senses are going to be like important. So it's really answering all those questions and being really clear, and then basing a story around that to tell your audience how you can best serve. um so yeah. I know,
Mm.
I'm hoping that that's clear. I'm like thinking, for example, in infographics, those are probably one of the most difficult kind of things to kind of tell a story, because with infographics, a lot of times you'll get diagrams that are supposed to come across and explain certain type of methodologies or ways to simplify something. And those are where the challenge is, because with infographics or diagrams, you're taking a concept and then you're having to then illustrate what that concept is. So when you look at it, somebody could look at it and be like, oh, yeah, I get it. As opposed to, reading 3 or 4 paragraphs of content, or reading full articles or anything like that. So it's really trying to break down what you want that message or story to be and simplify it in a way that your eye is going to recognize and your eye is going to be able to interpret and then understand what is truly supposed to be, what the message truly is.
Mm.
So, that's the challenge. That's the fun.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's where you get all creative and colors and, illustrations and all that stuff. So,
yeah.
um,
It's some
yeah.
amazing things. I mean, I've seen some recently. Um, I'm just thinking of an example. I guess the one that comes to mind is how the top 20 companies have changed over the years. And it's a video, it's a bar chart, but it's a video bar chart moving. So it goes 1970 and it's got all the companies listed, 1980, and you sort of see, you know, things move around a little bit. And the striking thing, though, is you get into the 1990s and all of a sudden there's this massive change. So as
Mhm.
the internet companies start to grow and move up, so you get your Googles and your Apples and your Amazons and so on moving up. And it's it's kind of interesting. It sort of visually presents this, but then it really hits home that like the 70s to the 90s, you get a little bit of movement, but then all of a
Mhm.
sudden the whole thing just sort of massively starts moving, and you think, wow, that the
Yeah.
story that's telling is the 90s and then into the early 2000s. There was
Mhm.
huge change and huge disruption to kind of big business,
Absolutely.
and that's the story it's telling, and it's just such a simple visual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it sounds similar to like if you ever, I mean, you can do a Google search on this. Is sometimes they'll do industry by color, and they'll just take logos of the different industries and you block them off. Basically, you can see which, like healthcare might be in blue and green, or
Mm.
technology is going to be in the blues, and then you might get food in the reds, or like in how you see how clusters of color will then influence a certain industry. And you never really think about it until somebody actually puts it into an infographic and you're like, wow, everybody uses the same color combinations for that. Why not try a different color combination
Mm.
so you stand out? I mean, it's always a question that should be asked and looked at.
Mm.
Um, because I'm sure you might have seen this when were doing websites. Is some companies want to say they want to differentiate, but then they don't
And,
because they want to
it's
make sure that they're
I like these
they're blending.
websites that look like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like, well, everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
We have a lot of blue logos in the world.
Yes.
So yes, so
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
it's
that's always
always
a good
changing.
question, isn't it? Why are we doing it that way? And
Yeah,
often the answer is just, "Oh, because that's the way we've always done it. That's the way everybody's always done it."
yeah, yeah. But I mean, if you look at some of the enterprise larger companies, obviously like Coca-Cola or Pepsi, because they've had the massive budgets and subtle changes that they've made, but their colors have always stayed the
Mm,
same. You can always tell, like Target, there's like subtle changes that they might do, but they hold on to those colors and they like colors they use and they flash them everywhere and they know how to work with them really well with other colors and seasonal and um so you have to give them kudos because it's consistency. It's, knowing how to use it really well, knowing how to, when you can go outside the box and deviate a little bit, but still come back to like what your core colors are. Yeah. I mean, there's some companies that do it beautifully. Um, and they have the budgets to do it. So
mm. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a lot easier, but
Well,
yeah.
brand guidelines are so important, right? And understanding
Mhm.
that and there's it's interesting, I'm always fascinated when somebody does do a rebranding, what's driven them and how far they deviate, particularly older companies, how far they then deviate from the core branding,
Yeah.
which, presumably, if it's a larger company, there was a lot of thought went into that. Um,
Yeah.
mm,
I think it's hard to say. I know Pepsi did a rebrand, I think it was last year or maybe a year and a half ago or so. And they still have the core colors but I'm kind of curious of how long it will last because to me, the balance of the lettering is not it's not there. So you're losing like the I in the Pepsi, um, but then it will, might change again in another 8 years or 5 years or go back to what it originally was. Yeah. But again, like when you said earlier about the difference between what happened the 70s to the 90s and having the internet boom and all that other stuff, it was things did change a lot. It opened up a whole new different type of industry that all of a sudden identities could be different and identities,
mm,
could go lowercase type when they're using weird colors and, not worrying about black and white because they never went to print. They were only on the web. So
yeah,
um, thinking about those technical aspects of didn't really have to worry about whether the logo was one color or two colors because it was always going to be in four color or, so um, yeah, things are always changing, but
mm,
still stuff stays the same. So,
yeah, fascinating. Well, um, I guess one of the questions that brings up for me, and we talked about sort of how the world's changing, and we've got this boom in artificial intelligence tools or so-called
yeah,
artificial intelligence. I mean, the large language models, but they're also capable of creating images and now creating videos. I saw, I think it was OpenAI that has a tool where I saw the demo of it. I thought, wow, that's quite amazing. They can actually have people doing things that you're struggling. And I get this one newsletter that always has a quiz at the end that has two images. They're different images of different people. And it says which one is the artificial intelligence generated image. And I I never can pick it. I mean, they look to me, they look equally realistic. And
yeah.
it's kind of like, to me, it's a complete guess which one, and I half the time I get it wrong. What's
Oh,
the yeah, wha what's the how do you see technology kind of playing into this, and what do you see as some of the risks there? Because obviously
yeah.
um, there's the question, I mean, if I can't tell the difference between what's a real photo and a fake photo, there's the question of
Mm,
what's the ethical implication of that when somebody's using
Right.
photos general or videos generated by artificial intelligence, not to mention the
Yeah.
text, of course.
Right. I mean, I think it's a lot. Uh, I look at everything that we have right now as the tools. The tools are great because if you know how to master the tools, it's only going to help your creativity and your skill set, because like it's great to have some of the things like in Photoshop there to remove a background used to take an hour. Now it takes like 3 minutes or, 2 seconds so there's like the development or the improvement of tools is great because the time savings is just amazing. Um, I don't necessarily think that all the AI tools are as good as they could be. They're better than they were 3 months ago. They're
Mm.
probably going to be better in another 3 months and stuff like that. But there's still something not natural about them. And so, like, I saw a video the other day of somebody who it was obviously it looks like a real person, but it was not a real person, and they were speaking about something, and it was just kind of unsettling because it was just on the borderline of fake.
Mm.
Um, just doesn't look realistic, and regardless if it was a real person or not, and there were like the words, you're not getting the human emotion, you're not getting the human feeling, you're not getting the human touches or the empathy or the um the you're not getting that real life feeling. It's serving a purpose, but it's the
Yeah.
emotion's not there. And I think that's part of it. People need that emotion. They need that buy-in of like, I can see myself doing that. If it's slightly fake, it's a tool. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And
It's a li
so
it's almost a
yeah.
little bit like stock photos, isn't it? Like, years ago,
Yeah.
people would, rather than spend money getting a photographer to do
Yeah.
custom photographs for a website or a brochure, they'd use stock photos, and everybody was using the same
Yeah.
stock photos. So, "Oh, I've seen this before somewhere." And so
Absolutely.
that's not an emotional connection, obviously.
No, I mean, but it's I mean, again, it's a tool.
Mm.
It served a purpose. If you don't have the budget, it
Yeah.
will, work or pinch. And then, if you do something to them and make it more interesting or add graphics or, something like, then you can make them more
Mm.
inviting or appealing. Um, but yeah, like I mean the AI stuff, like I said, some people are like, oh, it's gonna take over everybody's job. And I'm like, well, maybe or maybe not. But at the end of the day, if you know how to use them and make and use them as to enhance your skills, then it's gonna be better for you versus like thinking it's just gonna take over what you do.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
you have to
It's
have the right
yeah.
mindset about it.
Yeah,
And,
I think
and
that's important to have, what that you point out, it's a mindset and it's a tool. So learning how to use the tool, and that's kind of what forward-thinking people do. They go, "Okay, there's a new tool I can use, and it's going to make me
yeah,
perhaps more creative, perhaps make me more efficient, perhaps allow me to do stuff." To me, it's starting to allow me to do things that perhaps before I thought, um, I'm not capable of doing those, or um, that just takes me too long, and that I'd be better off getting an expert to do that. Well, now some of those things, um, with
yeah,
the help of the large language models, I can actually do them and do them
right,
reasonably well. Now, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, or how I get to that point, uh, but I've got
right.
the tool to do that. It's kind of like having I can't lift up my car and put it on blocks, but I can use a tool to get it up and put it on
Right.
the blocks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think I've best about the LMMs is the fact that they've answered questions for me so quickly that I didn't have to like call 5 developers and hope that they had 5 minutes and wouldn't charge me $250 to answer one question that they may or may not know. I can go to Chat GPT and say, here's my coding problem. Don't know code well.
Yeah.
What do I do? And it will tell me.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, okay, source
Yeah,
great.
that's right.
Um,
I've found that
yeah,
too. I've, got lots of complicated Excel spreadsheets now that
Mhm.
I never used to like the Excel spreadsheets I used were typically very simple. I'd have cells that were sums or multiplications or maybe even an average. That was about the limit of the
Yeah.
sophistication. Well, now I do all kinds of fancy things. I've got nested if statements and all kinds of weird and wonderful
Mhm.
formulas. And all I do is I go into ChatGPT and I describe the spreadsheet. And I say, in this cell, I want this to display. I want it to be blank if there's something in here. I don't want it to display anything
Mhm.
if this condition is met, and if these conditions are met, then I want it to work out this calculation, and it'll come back and it'll give me sort of a
Yep.
half-page formula that I plug in, and
Yep.
sometimes it makes a mistake, and I just give it the error code that Excel spits out, and it says, "Oh, I'm
Mhm.
sorry," and it corrects it, and
Yep.
I've got all these wonderful,
I'm
spreadsheets now.
I know. I mean, but that's like the best part
Mm,
of this technology or this thing because, like, if you think about it, before when we were have the browsers, you would ask a question, the browser would go, and it would scour through articles and over and over to articles and like whatever, which we do not know if it's accurate or
mm,
true or like whatever. And we may or may not find an answer, and it's also very frustrating because some companies, even if they have an FAQ or they have like the docs to explain something, they truly don't answer the question. They kind of just give you a general
mm,
answer of what it could be. Whereas like with LLMs now, you ask a question, it comes up with the exact answer that you need versus trying to figure out, well, that's still not the answer.
mm.
Now it's telling you the answer. And it was just like, thank God,
Yeah, and you don't have to
it's so
scan
much
you
better.
don't have to scan through a
No,
page or more of articles
yeah,
and say, "Okay, I'll read this one," and then you read it, "No, that's not it." Go back, "Okay,
right.
what's the next one
Exactly.
say?" Mm,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
amazing, yeah. So, you mentioned sort of how some of those tools are helping you be more creative or solve some problems that maybe you needed to pay people money for in the past. What
mhm.
else do you see, these tools helping you to transform the way you work?
um, yeah, the Adobe is doing a lot with what they're offering as far as their tool set. So, filling in backgrounds or creating backgrounds or if somebody had their profile shot and they had their head cut off or their arms, like their shoulders cut off, I can now, draw in the top of their head or their shoulders. And so I can get the proper spacing of a profile, or I can remove parts of clothing, or I can remove, blemishes, or I can, like fix hair or fix, like there's all those little technical things that were just pain to fix before. Um, so that's good as like Photoshop. With Illustrator, it's great because if you do have an idea about an illustration, it will, help you create the illustration for you. Which I work in a lot of vector. So, um, being able to have that type of thing is really great. But again, you have to worry about like the legal copywriting issue of that. Um, let's see what else. I think those are probably the most, besides like Chat GPT and like rewriting content or
Mm,
um, finding code problems. I think it's been really helpful. Um, I don't necessarily care for the tools when it's used for video with fake people, or taking content and then making it into a video of fake people or podcast of fake people. That stuff, I think, like I said, it was borderline not
mm,
natural. And so, when I have seen it used in cases, to me, it makes that product or service not as um, legit, if you will. Like
mm.
I just kind of think they took the easy way out as opposed to like, you know, thinking about their audience and thinking about their reputation and thinking about how they really wanted to represent represent themselves. I kind of want them to be better.
Yeah,
Um, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
it's my
understand.
2 cents. Other people
With
totally, like, disagree with it, but, you
yeah,
know,
I think it's probably got a little ways to go. Um,
yeah.
I did see one thing, and Jill Scheffelbein, who was a guest on our show a while back, she's involved in a company that they use video artificial intelligence in a really nifty way, and this blew my mind. So if you check that episode, there's actually a demo she ran for us there. What they do
Mhm.
is they take the person, so let's say it's you, they would take you into their studio and for half an hour or an hour, so relatively short session, they film you. So you basically speak, get on a green screen and you speak, and you say some things, and I guess they've got scripts and so on. They film you.
Yeah.
And from that, they create an avatar. And that avatar is is you. It's your image. Well, what you can do
Mhm.
with that though now is you can type in text into so that software, you can type in text to this software and that will produce a video of you speaking that text and it looks absolutely
Sure.
perfect
Huh.
because
But I
it,
wonder, would there be a nuance of, like, the joke or the facial expression or the, "Oh,
yeah.
I messed up," or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
could it
I
actually carry
don't know. I
through
mean, the
or
one I only saw a couple of demos and the text was pretty much about what this software is about, what this service is about, and it did seem very natural. I mean, the
yeah,
whole like the little what do you call them? The little idiosyncrasies of the person um, were actually coming through in that speech.
huh,
The thing that blew me away though was you can then ask it to translate. So imagine this: translate what I've just said into Mandarin. Now
okay.
I know perhaps 10 words of Mandarin, but I could never have a conversation in Mandarin. Translate this into Mandarin, then
Yeah,
it produces me speaking fluent Mandarin, and now I can't check how good the Mandarin was, but
right.
I did do the German one, and I checked that, and it was grammatically absolutely perfectly correct,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and it was the High German, so the formal language,
Mhm.
but not overly formal, so it was sort of casual in the presentation, but the formal way to speak the
Yeah,
language.
huh,
And I thought, wow, that's incredible
huh.
because then you can reach people everywhere, right?
Yeah, did it kinda creep you out, or did it,
Oh
like
yeah, mm,
yes.
because if
Um,
somebody else were to get a
yeah,
hold of your avatar,
I know.
imagine
That's
what they could
horrible.
do.
Right, devastating.
Mm,
And they'd
yeah,
be like, "I never said that."
exactly.
That'd be horrible.
Yes,
But
quoting people out of context could take on a whole new life
I
form.
know. It would be like, that's a totally different way of, like, identity theft. It would be
Yeah.
it's horrible.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I think it would be something you'd have to protect very carefully. So
Yeah,
almost more so than your bank account details.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Like, yeah, I don't even wanna think about
All right.
it.
On that slightly lighthearted note, serious but lighthearted. Um, well, I guess one of the other questions I have for you is what do you see happening with future trends in visual and design? And is there something you like or dislike about where that's heading?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think it goes back to the AI. I think because that is changing and going on so fast and having um, people saying it's going to take over jobs. And of course, there's probably going to be jobs that I will lose but I always, there's jobs that I lose because of price. There's jobs
Mm.
that I lose because of like the person's younger or older, that, there's jobs that I lose, for whatever reason. So I think that, as far as trends goes, like I recently did read an article about this, what they're saying, and it did come down to the fact that if you can grasp AI and you can use it to your benefit, as a great tool, and really know how to manipulate is not the right word, but really know how to utilize them to enhance your skills and enhance your business. Um, that's going to be really important because there are a ton of designers in the world, and not everybody's going to be able to really grasp it, or people are going to be like, well, I don't, they're going to be replaced by it. So that's their mindset, and that's it.
Mm.
Um, I really think that for what I specifically do, it still comes down to strategy. AI can. AI can, like, sure, and you can be like, what should I do? And put it in, and LLM can spit out these answers, but they're always going to spit out the same answers if you put in the same prompts. So, but you still have to talk to the customers. You still have to find your why. You still have to like do all the work, even though you have all these tools around you. So, um, I don't know. I still think you have to have the good good old try and true. You have to have your
Yeah.
strategy. You have to have your why. You have to like understand your audience. You have to be able to resonate with them. You have to provide something that they want and that they need and they become reliant upon. That is something that is not going to be replaceable by AI or something like that.
Mm.
So, um, and then otherwise, it's just like being aware of what is happening in the world with trends of colors and typography and technology and everything like that, and just really embracing it and utilizing it to your full, skill set to make it better and enhance it, and um, be creative with it and be curious about it, and and make have fun with it, like
Mm.
all those things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
how about yourself? What do you
I
what
think
do you think about like that?
I think curiosity and fun are really important aspects. The I heard a quote, or I heard somebody say something, and I kind of took this on board as a quote. I think that captures the essence of this whole AI development thing, and it was jobs are not going to be replaced by AI. Um, oh no, how did they express it? People are not going to lose their jobs to AI. People are going to lose
Mhm.
their jobs to people who know how to use AI.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
thought that
Exactly.
that that really captures
Yeah.
it for me. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's so much you can do with AI. And you mentioned strategy. I mean, one of the things I do quite a lot is I do a lot of definition around who the ideal customer is, and for a
Mhm.
podcast, who's the ideal listener, um, and go to the point of really writing out a description and eliciting that from my clients. and and I've found now that I can take sort of the questions that I ask of that, and I usually then went away and wrote that up in a nice format, and here's the description of that person. Now I use ChatGPT to do that. So I
Mhm.
ask the questions, get all the answers, and then I give it to ChatGPT, and I've developed a prompt that's been refined over many iterations. And I say,
Yeah.
here's the answer, spit out my ideal client, and it'll give it to me. And usually I do a little bit of fine tuning from there. But then I
Mhm.
have that description, and it's very detailed about what they
Mhm.
like and what drives them and what motivates them and how to speak to them and how they like to
Mhm.
communicate and what their deepest desires are, what their values are.
Mhm.
And then I can
Yeah.
take that and I can say, okay, now that you know all this about my dream
Mhm.
customer, my dream listener, um, and you know about my products or my services. how should I be selling this to them? What's my strategy for getting them interested
Mhm.
in this, or do they even need this? And then I can kind of use that, and it really just accelerates that whole process. I mean, they're all the questions that I internally ask myself or in conversations with customers or with the team. But now I
Right.
can actually use ChatGPT to be a conversation partner in some of that process.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. I think I mean, with that, it's cutting down the work so that it doesn't take as
Good.
long. But I think when you go to validate is like when you can actually see that the output is what is going to be true. And when
Mm.
you validate, it's actually talking to actual people, because I mean, they can make recommendations. At the end of the day, I think everybody always says, like, I know who I want to talk to. I just have a hard time finding them,
Yeah, yeah.
and so it might spit out an answer of like, here's where you find them. But then when you go and you prototype and you test and you talk to them, then you can actually see if everything that you found is true and
Mm.
valid. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, well,
I mean, again,
that's obvious. Yeah, that's obviously where
yeah,
the rubber hits the road, right? You just got to
right.
test it in the real world. It's,
Yeah.
oh, so
So,
ChatGPT can be helpful in accelerating getting to that point where you're
right.
ready to go out and test in the real world, and hopefully, if it's done well, the chance of success at that point when you're testing is going to be much greater.
Right. Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think it's probably a good time now to move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round. It's the same 5 questions I ask of every guest. And the idea
Okay.
is you'll give us some snappy answers that'll inspire the listener to take action today as a result and do something awesome.
Okay. All right.
So, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Be curious
Hmm.
and yeah, be curious.
Yeah. And we mentioned that earlier, right? Curiosity. So important. All right.
Yeah.
What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Be curious. Honestly. Yeah. Always be learning, always be curious, asking questions, always being like seeing other sides or finding different avenues to go look at or different directions to look at and really trying to understand the challenge
Hmm.
and figure out why the challenge is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another way I've found ChatGPT can be really helpful. Um, that 3-year-old in your life that is always going, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass
Yeah.
green? Why is the snow white? And all these kind of questions where um, we we tend to crush their creativity by saying, "Go away and leave me alone. Stop asking silly questions." Well, at some point, of course, we get to where we are today and we say, well, we're not going to ask people why or what if this. What if I do something completely different out of the ordinary? Because I might feel silly, or people might sort of come back and say, what a stupid question. Well, hey, I can go and ask ChatGPT because it's not going to come back and say, what a stupid question,
Right.
or go away and leave me alone. So
It's true.
I actually
It's
love
so true.
doing that. I say, "Why is this?" or "Why is that?" And, seeing what
Mhm.
comes up, or I say, "Well, what if I did something this way instead of the traditional way?"
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
They won't come back and be insulted either.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And in fact, I've gotten frustrated where it's given me, um it keeps giving me an answer that for some reason, well, I'd say I don't like it, but it's I want it different, and I say, "No, no, want this different," and then it comes back with the same answer and says, "No, no," and then I c change the
yeah.
prompt again, and at some stage I get frustrated because I can't get the prompt right to get it to give me a different answer, and I'll say, why are you stuck on this? Stop being stupid." And I'll say something like that, and it never comes back and gets insulted.
No. Yeah, and no, the other thing is though too is like try to open up a new prompt because sometimes if it's in like one long line, it
Mm,
always goes back to what you asked
okay,
before.
yeah.
So start it on a new one. Sometimes we'll clear that like, you're totally not giving me what I
Yeah,
so that's how I that's
yeah,
how I figured out to get rid of that.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
sometimes I say, "Forget about this, and let's do it different." That works
It still
sometimes.
was
Yeah, mm. Alright, so we've talked about ChatGPT. What's a favorite resource you use most often?
um, let's see. I mean, besides the internet, um Uh, either the internet or asking other people, who, what would they do
Mm,
about XYZ or, like whatever, and try to pick their brain. Um, I
yeah,
don't know. Yes.
excellent, yeah, it's great. Yeah, I think it's important to talk with other people. That's one of the dangers I see with some of these tools is that we kinda get stuck at our computer and don't go and talk to people.
Yeah, I
Mm,
mean, but that's what's so cool about like being human because nobody sees anything the same way,
mm,
and so it's like it's always amazing when you ask somebody something and they totally either don't get it or they get a totally different way or they see it a different way. And it's almost like, really? That's the way you
yeah,
think?
yeah.
It just
Oh,
is always
yeah,
mind boggling,
yeah,
Yeah. And
which
it's
is
just
comes
fascinating.
back to the curiosity, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I often have that where I say, "Well,
Yeah.
never
It-
thought of it that way," or yeah,
yeah.
mm, yeah,
Especially if you get somebody who has not a clue of like why it would be any different or like it's a norm to them or never question or they never do anything, it would be like, wow, you never really think about that. And they're like, no, like, maybe not. So it's always like interesting, like, I don't know. It's always interesting to talk to new people or strangers or whatever, and get in these weird conversations and they say stuff and you're like, oh, really?
yeah,
I don't know. It's fun.
great. Alright, well, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
Communication and communication has to be it
Mm,
because otherwise, things can totally, if you don't speak up or you don't be clear about the intention or goals or outcomes or anything like that, it can just become a cluster and it gets very uncomfortable for both parties and nobody wants to like have an uncomfortable project. And so it's being very clear and asking questions and
yeah,
um, you
right,
know, the yeah. Um, and I think also helping it organization really helps. Being really, being having a set process of how you run a project and having timelines and um uh really keeping on track of like what the intention is and making sure that that
mm,
stays. I'm gonna call. Sorry. So yeah.
yeah, and yeah, well, referring to the strategy, I think
Excuse me. Yeah.
is kind of a good point there, right? Is it's the intention and the yeah, and communicating that and referring back to that regularly is good. Mm.
Right. Exactly. So
All right. Well, finally, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
that depends on the goal. It depends upon the why and the audience. So yeah, it's not an easy answer just because a lot of you really have to know your why and your audience and how you want to the benefit and really think about how you want to do it differently. A lot of people can say the same exact thing. And it's really trying to figure out or really going diving down deep of like what is the differentiation. And I don't think a lot of times people spend enough time looking at that because they think they have one angle, but they don't really look at the audience or they put it on themselves versus putting on, thinking about the client.
Mm.
So yeah. that's not like a simple answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it comes back again to understanding the audience really, isn't it? And
Yeah,
what do they
yeah,
value?
right, exactly, and the
And
benefits and how you're gonna talk to them and
yeah.
yeah,
And is that something that's consistent with my brand philosophy, product, whatever it may
right,
be? So it all comes together. Mm.
exactly. Mhm.
All right. Well, thanks for getting us through the buzz round and thanks for the conversation so far, Jillfrances. It's been really fascinating. Now, where can people find out more about you and the work you do and maybe even get in touch and say thanks for what you've shared today?
Sure, my website is jfg.com, and, that has, the work that I do and talks about the business that I run, and there is, my contact information is there, and so, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, and of course, we'll have, as always, the link to that in the show notes so people can click straight through from there.
Thank you.
Finally, Jillfrances, what action would you like our listener to take out of our conversation today?
I hope that they think a little bit more about visual communications and strategy and how when doing a marketing project or any type of like business development or anything that really kind of think about having those two be at the forefront because yes, there's messaging and positioning, but really strategy and visual communications in combination with messaging and positioning can really talk to the audience in a more emotional and impactful way that will have a greater impact to the business growth. So, and AI is a tool,
Yeah,
not a taker. So,
excellent. Yeah, well, that's
yeah,
an important final message. But yes,
yeah,
think about the visual aspects of your communication strategy. Wonderful.
yeah,
All right. Well, thanks
yeah.
so much for today's conversation, Jillfrances. It's been fascinating. We've covered lots of areas from the very creative to um, the emotional connection that can be built through good visual communication and authentic visual communication. And that took us into AI and lots of
Yeah.
lots of thoughts and ideas about um, using ChatGPT or um, the photographic tools in Adobe and Illustrator.
Yes. Thank you for having me. This is so much fun. And I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.